Hello and welcome to Women in Trade, where we showcase the wonderful stories of women doing great things, not only in Australia, but globally. I'm your host, Catherine Cervasio. We're going to share two wonderful stories today. We'll explore the highs and the lows and everything in between. My first guest today has 20 years of global experience. She has lived abroad in Mexico, South Africa, France, and now Australia. She's a seasoned traveller, she's culturally rich, and she's currently the director of French School and Cultural Centre, Alliance Française. Welcome, Johanna Durand.
Thank you, Catherine.
Now, I have had the pleasure of interviewing you before, and I know that a lot has changed from, let's say, fast forward 12 months to where we were before to now. Wow, so much has happened. Now, you've lived abroad, you speak 3 languages. Obviously, you're in this amazing role at Alliance Française because you have this culturally rich background. Talk to me a little bit about how you came to be in Australia and taking this role at Alliance Française. And do you think that this diverse background that you have has played a role in what you're doing today?
Yes, for sure. I've been privileged to be able to travel thanks to my work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And it has been a long journey full of surprises and opportunities. And after exploring all America, Africa, and Europe, I was really determined to go on a new adventure. And I felt very much appealed to Australia because of its rich culture and multicultural diversity. So I was up for this new challenge. And it's true, the boat has rocked in the last 12 months. And I was really happy to learn from the Australians how to shift crisis into opportunities and learned also the positivity and the resilience from Australians that have been also through very difficult times. And history has proven that these recipes, the Aussie recipes, were successful. So I've tried to listen and to learn and to listen to our students who have been amazingly faithful and loyal to the organization and to the team and partners.
So one of those words you used is resilience, and I must say that that is the word I always refer to. I think that is something you really need to dig deep, and you need to be able to think creatively, which is probably something that you're really strong at, although I guess you never saw this coming, right?
No, I didn't, and I think it would be very arrogant to pretend so. So yes, it took us by surprise, but that's life as well. Yeah. And we have shifted, like everybody, fully online. And we have learned a lot along the lines, and I think it's we try to take as many positive outcomes from it, and it changes also the way we do things on site and face to face. We realize where the value is.
For our viewers who are not familiar with what Alliance Française does, talk to us a little bit about the history and what they offer.
So Alliance Française is a global network. There is about almost 1,000 Alliance Française in the world. Each capital city and all the crazy, interesting and quirky cities in the world have their own Alliance Française. Some of them are recent. The one in Melbourne is 130 years old. Wow. So it goes hand in hand with the history of the city and the community.
And it sounds like there's an awful lot of French-loving residents in Australia.
Absolutely.
And particularly in Melbourne. Yeah, and I know that I'm one of them.
It's a big love story, big love affair with between the Melburnians and the Alliance Française and the Frenchies here. And basically, it's a non-for-profit organization, and we do French language courses and French cultural events. We open up also to Francophone, French-speaking countries, and we try to promote the culture, lifestyle, language, and to do some cooperation between the two countries to all kind of audiences audiences. It can be individuals, corporate, it can be also schools. We have a partnership with the Department of Education and Training, and we are open to new partners as well.
And I know you even have a beautiful event space. So there's lots and lots of things on offer. Book clubs, cooking classes, art appreciation, and of course, French language, if that's your thing. Now, Alliance Française is a well-known sponsor of one of the major European film festivals in Australia. So in Melbourne, we have the French Film Festival. I think it's in its 32nd year this year. Now, with cinema, it was one of those industries that was really badly affected by the pandemic, losing up to 70% of its revenue. How did your festival recover throughout last year and this year, which has just recently launched again? What's been the impact, and how did the festival recover?
Well, the impact has been massive. We were looking in terms of calendar because most of the movies were shot already at the beginning of the pandemic, so they were in post-production. So that allowed the movies to come out eventually with reduced delays. It has been hard for Melbourne, especially because last year's festival had to be fully cancelled. It happened though in other cities. So it was a very difficult times for all the cinema industry, from production to distribution. It was very, very, very hard. And we saw the online kicking up. And obviously, it's a very different experience. I think it's hard to compare, you know, when you have couch, you know, binge watching, you know, it's a bit... Yeah, and then when you are in a real cinema with audio surrounding and you appreciate the big screen and the friends and the drinks, and it's all different, and it's very, very safe because you're only going one direction. You don't have any risk of contamination, and there is excellent. We've made sure that all the safety protocols were extremely followed, so it's extremely safe now.
So it's been an awful lot of work.
It has been.
Some of the festival going online last year, obviously in somewhat of a limited capacity, but more recently the 2021 festival did launch.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So the Alliance Française French Film Festival started last week in Melbourne and Sydney. It's going to expand to all the major cities in Australia. It appeals, it's the biggest festival abroad.
So the Australian
yes, the
festival?
Australian one, yeah. It appeals every year about 200,000 patrons, and it's extremely successful. So you have all the information online on affrenchfilmfestival.org and on Palace Cinema's website as well.
So for those of you who are in Australia watching this, you can actually see the festival each year through the month of March. I think it's usually on, is that right?
Absolutely.
Yes. And there's some great titles. I know this year at the media launch, they were talking a little bit about each movie and why it was selected. So I think that gave people a really good overview of what sorts of things they might like to go and see. And I must say, for someone who has looked at some international films, it really is lovely and immersive, and it just carries you away as if you're actually in France or having a holiday somewhere just for those couple of hours. So for people who want to explore that cultural experience, I think this is a really good opportunity with some of these international French film festivals that come to town.
Exactly. It's the best way to travel. No jet lag, no safety issue, and you can just escape and discover a whole new world. And actually this year we have 9 world premiere. So it's a good way to see the movies before everybody else in the world. So
absolutely, that's a great reason to go. And so with going back to the Alliance Française, these are, you can learn a language. These are all around the world. The one we have here has a lot of rich history. It's been here for a long, long time. So there's obviously a demand for it here. And people can learn online, or they can actually go into the centre. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We have premises in the CBD on Swanston Street, also in St Kilda online, and we're looking to open up new premises.
So larger premises or just an additional one?
Yeah, additional one together for everybody, because the Melbourne city is quite spread out. So we just want to be close to all the Melburnians.
So for those of you around the world watching this who thought that film was off, it's on. And in Australia, it's on in a COVID-safe way. Please support your local Alliance Française office and do check out the film festival in your area. And thank you very much to Joanna for coming in today.
Merci, Catherine.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with another wonderful story.
Think about the clothes you're wearing, the food you're eating, or even the furniture in your home. There is a story and history associated with every product you've ever bought. Unfortunately, sometimes the workers who make your products are subjected to terrible working conditions, are not treated fairly, or the manufacturing process is harmful to the environment. There are many forms of modern slavery and damaging production methods, but it's up to us, industry leaders and the consumers themselves, to take a stand so that we can contribute to a healthier planet and to changing the lives of everyone involved across the global supply chains for the better. Ethical Trade Alliance enables buyers to make informed choices on all of the products they purchase.
Welcome back to Women in Trade. Now, this next guest I actually met on a trade mission in China, of all places, and she has quite an interesting story of tragedy, adversity, and then triumph. And I'd love to welcome Sally Jones from Gippsland Jersey. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine, and it's so nice to be back with you.
Now, a couple of years have passed since we actually met, and I heard a little bit about your story, but I thought it would be just wonderful to share with our viewers who are not just local, but also in trade offices around the world, and just, I guess, explain some of what's happened and share some of the opportunity, some of the collaborations that have come out of your COVID experience, let's say, and also some of the plans that you've got for the next step. So tell us a little bit about Gippsland Jersey to begin with. Where does your dairy business begin?
That's a lot of questions. I will attempt to start telling you a little bit about my background, and that is that I was born onto the dairy industry. And, you know, I thought that I had finished that once I'd sort of escaped living with my family, moved to Melbourne, but it was very much only, I guess, my apprenticeship. And then I've definitely come back just because of, I guess, life circumstances, and also it's my passion as well. I do love the dairy industry and I love its people and I love what we produce. And we are, you know, I guess in terms of what we add value to Australia and in terms of the economic value that dairy brings is huge.
So tell me a little bit about, where did dairy start in your family? How did that begin?
So we have a property in Lakes Entrance, which is far east of Gippsland. And we have, it's a beautiful property. And in the 80s, my dad decided that he would value add to the farm. And that is, he built a factory next to the dairy, and he was one of the first ones in Australia to obtain a dairy licence.
So a pioneer back in the day, a pioneer of the industry, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. So I grew up, you know, milking cows, making ice cream, and then we had ice cream shops.
Oh, that would have been a really terrible childhood.
Yeah, everyone wanted to come and visit.
I can imagine.
So it was really, you know, I guess we really learned how to work hard. We learned how to make the best of what we had. And I guess for me, it was an invaluable childhood to set me up for what I'm doing now.
So you ended up in Melbourne. What happened there?
I went off and I studied arts at uni. Like any farm child, prepared to just leave regional life behind and be a bit of a person in the big smoke.
Was there a bit of the grass is greener?
Absolutely. I think the first time I ever drove into Melbourne was when I was coming to live here in my car. I didn't know how to use the navman or anything, so it was a very big learning curve. And then I was selling my dad's produce at the farmers markets just to pay my rent. and people were asking, what milk, you know, how does this get made, and tell us about the cows, and we want to know more about what you do. And I remember thinking, why would you want to know about this? You know, this is just what we do. And that was quite a life-defining moment for me, because I thought there's a real gap and a real bridge from where the consumers are, what they want to know, and what farmers do.
Hasn't consumer goods come such a long way in the last few years, with shoppers really wanting to know the origin of what they're buying, and they want to know the stories? I think the stories are more important now than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, so certainly the provenance around, especially with COVID hitting, people have said to us, we just want to back Australian owned. We want to support made in Australia, owned by Australians. So for us, it's been a real advantage, the fact that we are, you know, such a little business that is very patriotical about supporting local.
So let's talk about the next chapter. You've got dairy cows.
Yeah.
You're sending your milk off to be processed by a professional facility, and that's what happens in the industry, similar to us in the skincare industry. And what happened then?
There's a little bit more of a backstory. So my days with my family sort of, and the farm had sort of finished up, and then I'll just sort of go off on a little bit of sad tangent that my dad was a dairy farmer and a businessman, and he finished that and lost his identity. So that meant he had mental health issues and depression and anxiety, and it just spiraled for him, and we journeyed that very hard time as a family, and unfortunately that ended up him taking his life, and he was a victim of suicide and mental health, and that's very prevalent in Australian men.
Yes, and particularly in farmers.
Yeah, yeah.
So is this part of the reason why you've put so much effort and I guess recognise this passion and run with it?
Certainly, you know, I was full of grief, and I'm a person that needed to channel everything into something, and we all do deal with adversities differently in our lives, and for me it was just like, okay, a few weeks later the dairy crisis happened, and farmers were on their knees in Australia, and it was quite triggering because my dad was a dairy farmer, and that's the reason why my dad did what he did and worked so hard, was because he truly believed that farmers needed to be paid a fairer price. So
Sally, for the viewers who are not familiar with the dairy crisis, just give us a little brief overview of what actually happened in Australia to the dairy industry.
In 2016, Murray Goulburn basically essentially pulled the rug from underneath dairy farmers. So they were, I guess, told that they would be paid a certain price, and the way that farming works is that farmers budget and they forecast and they spend the money before they often have it into their bank account.
As do many business people.
So for them to have their not to be paid, it was devastating.
So basically the price that they were going to get for their milk was reduced in an instant.
Absolutely.
By a corporate.
Yes.
Okay, so that affected the entire Australian dairy industry. What happened next?
So it was back to the farmers market. I'm a mother of three and running a gorgeous little farmers market in Warragul, and the public were once again just crying out saying, what milk can we buy? We want to buy Australian, support our own local farmers. And I remember just being in there at that moment with all these people sort of showing up, and with a panel of farmers explaining exactly what we're doing now about what their situation is. And that was the life-defining moment. So another dairy farmer, a friend, Steve Ronalds, I remember having a conversation with him, and it was on that day that we decided we'd start a milk brand, which we did. 3 months later, we had milk in a bottle.
So fast forward a couple of years and another challenge, another bump in the road.
Yes, so we were off and away. We had this beautiful milk in a bottle that was being outsourced to an Australian-owned company manufacturing, and we unfortunately didn't have a contract with that processor, and they decided that they would pull the rug from underneath us, essentially. And
so basically they've told you that they are no longer going to process this milk. So immediately there goes your livelihood.
Yeah, so everything that we'd worked so hard for, I think we were about a year and a half in, and that happened to us. So we were facing the very real risk of shutting the doors on our brand that, I guess for me, was very much a personal brand that I poured everything into, and for me I wasn't prepared to just walk away from that.
So how did you get through that? What was your thinking?
We got really creative, Catherine, and decided that we would capital raise, crowdfund. We didn't have a lot of equity in our business, and we didn't have any credit rating with the bank because we were so new, and we didn't have our own personal bank accounts as business owners were sort of maxed out. So we asked people to pre-purchase bottles of milk.
So you use a crowdfunding platform and you're sharing the story of what's happened, which is actually you've got a wonderful story, and people have jumped on board and they've invested, and with the funds raised, you were able to
mothball my dad's factory on our farm. So it's become full circle and incredibly special and healing for me, especially. So we are now have that full control of processing and manufacturing our own dairy products, and we're not just sort of subbing that out.
It's really interesting that you say that, Sally, because as a skincare company owner, many people in our industry also subcontract out their products to be made in laboratories. And we've actually had the same thing happen to us, as have numerous other companies and brands. So I think to be able to be in full control of your supply chain, it is critical. The other thing I love about what's going on in the world today is not only in Australia, but there's a lot of brand heritage. There's a lot of patriotism that goes with purchasing goods. And I think this is one of the amazing sectors that, like skincare, people are looking at, well, where is this made? Where's the packaging made? Where is this milk coming from? Where is this water coming from? You know, there's bodies like the Australian Made campaign that if you don't tick all the boxes, you actually can't get certified as an Australian product. So I think these things now are really important. The boutique operator is suddenly on trend and people care where their goods are coming from, which is wonderful for businesses like yours and mine. Sally, how have you managed all of this that's gone on around your partner and 3 young children? How is there balance? Is it possible to have it all? How have you managed?
I've got an incredible group of friends and a very supportive husband, and we are just so grateful to the Australian, public for backing our brand and for understanding who we are and what we're on about, because we do have so many layers to our story and things like that, and we're grateful to things like social media that we've been able to have a platform and to share. It's so important, I think, as brands to tell your own narrative.
And I know one thing that's certainly helped us, and it has helped you as well. There are lots of government agencies and chambers that have really pulled out all stops to support Australian businesses and Australian brands, and I'm guessing that's happening around the world as well. Now, we were both overseas as part of a government trade mission, and that was the first one of its kind. It was the inaugural female trade mission to China. But since COVID hit, there's been lots of other initiatives, and you've been a part of some of these. Talk to us about that.
So we were actually hit with drought and bushfire and COVID, so we've sort of got the trifecta in terms of, I guess, opportunities that government are putting towards us. And so the recent one I think we have got is that we're going through a program through Food and Fibre Gippsland. It's the export program, and it's concierging you into navigating how to get your product export ready. I know we've talked about it, and we went on a trip and I got so excited about the opportunities that do exist overseas for especially Australian dairy, because we have got such credibility, I guess, for being clean and green. And but I think as a small producer, it's very overwhelming because dairy has the highest sort of regulations and strictness around what you can and can't export. So for us to have the opportunity to go through this particular grant and opportunity is incredible.
And you may have also seen Sally's face on a huge piece of art installation down along the river walk at South Bank. Is that right?
Oh, you may have. You may have. I get a little bit shy about that one.
Look, the thing is that if you can contact your local offices around business and trade, including government offices, there are often initiatives that you may not have thought would apply to you that you can really leverage off to help boost what you're doing, especially in tough times. So, Sally, let me thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your wonderful story. We wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
We'll watch this space to see what happens next.
And just on a parting note, I would like to gift you some butter that's made out of our beautiful cream and salted with Mount Zero salt. So I know you're a very good cook and you're not afraid of the butter.
I'm not afraid of the butter, like any good foodie is not. And that's amazing. Thank you so much. So butter, milk. And we find you in our supermarkets, Gippsland Jersey. We'll pop a link when the show goes live.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. And if you want to see the shows easily, the best way is to download the Import Export TV app. See you next time.
Think about the clothes you're wearing, the food you're eating, or even the furniture in your home. There is a story and history associated with every product you've ever bought. Unfortunately, sometimes the workers who make your products are subjected to terrible working conditions, are not treated fairly, or the manufacturing process is harmful to the environment. There are many forms of modern slavery and damaging production methods, but it's up to us, industry leaders and the consumers themselves, to take a stand so that we can contribute to a healthier planet and to changing the lives of everyone involved across the global supply chains for the better. Ethical Trade Alliance enables buyers to make informed choices on all of the products they purchase.